Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is your weekly microdose of encouragement, inspiration, and miracle grow on your potential as a coach. As we always begin, do me a huge favor. You see this? Let us know that you're here. Tell us where you're joining us from, what you're excited about, what you feel life and momentum on. Also, leave your comments about what we're talking about and some of your own insights because this is a learning community and you guys are showing up from all over the world. You're brilliant people, and you're going to have some invaluable insights, not just me. Hey, want to take a quick second and congratulate everyone who made it through boot camp this weekend. We had a global group of coaches, brilliant people. I really enjoyed myself. Amazing people who went through our 3-day certification program. There's another one coming up at the end of June. So for those of you who are, well, we're talking about procrastination, right? Procrastinator types. Maybe the way to get through all of it is to join us on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and just knock it all out in a single weekend. It is a lot of work. That's why I sound like I do. It is a lot of work. So I've got to commend all of those people who joined us this weekend, and welcome to the LCTI family, especially if you're watching again, which is crazy that you spent all this time with me and now you're here again. I don't quite understand. Now, let me give you guys a hint really on the front end, a couple of things. One is it's Memorial Day. And first off, I want to thank all of the families who you had someone in your family that gave all. Doesn't matter if it was in the last 5 years or it was 100 years ago. I want to just say thank you to the people who have served and have paid an ultimate price for us to be able to do what we're doing today, which is to live free in this country. And I know that we are not a perfect country in the United States, but we're worth fighting for. And we get the privilege today to make choices, to make our lives better, to build businesses, and to help the world globally through coaching because people went out and thought it was worth fighting for and gave everything so that we could be here today. And I really appreciate that. Second thing that I would say about holidays in general and why I'm kind of not taking the day off. One thing that you guys need to know as coaches, a lot of times what coaches do when it gets around a holiday or it gets around some kind of a celebratory moment, they think that no one's paying any attention and they shut their business down. They do this around Thanksgiving, they do this around Christmas. Did you know that Thanksgiving time, not Thanksgiving time, but like November, December are massive business months for coaches? And so what happens is while everybody else is pulling the plug, and particularly other coaches and everything else, your people are often in the most undistracted time because they're available. They have their phone and it's late at night, or they're scrolling on social media. They're not having to work that day or whatever, and they get a chance to actually think about their life and decompress and think about the things that they actually want. So one reason why I'm actually on today and doing this today is because some of you are actually those people that you enjoyed your festivities with your family all day. You did some of those things, and I'm here because you're here. And so it's another thing is that you've got to understand is that your people, when you take a day off or a week off, your people are still looking at their social media, social media channels and different things like that where they follow you and you're not there, but somebody else is. Or maybe they're looking for you to be there. And so you want to be there, even if you have to record it and post it later, which it's actually 11 in the morning. Just as a secret, it's 11 in the morning over here in California. But I'm going to spend time with my family today. But I got to put the work in and I've got to serve you as well. Not neglecting my family. They're going to sleep in and they're going to get up and then we're going to go to the beach today. But I am here this evening with you, but it is recorded. So that's why I won't be going through comments and everything else. I could probably call out some names that'll probably be some people who are on here, but I won't do that. Either way, I'm not going to hold back and we're going to have a lot of fun and we're going to jump into this next procrastinator type. Let me hide that. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been in this series called The Life Coach's Guide to Procrastination. We had some great conversations about it this weekend, actually, in our boot camp. And so I was actually telling some of our students who went through that program to go back in time a couple of weeks ago, pick up the first two, and this is the third one. So a couple of weeks ago, I described the 6 procrastinator types. We actually did a little quiz. Some of you found out what kind of a procrastinator you are, because pretty much everybody is to some degree. Last week we talked about perfectionists. This week we're talking about worriers. Now, what I need to do is I need to redefine, remind you of the definitions of what each one of these types are. So let me do that really quickly. A worrier is a person who doesn't start that important or difficult task because they don't believe they'll be able to do it. They fear they won't succeed. They feel anxiety at the thought of failure. Thus, it is better to not start the task, as you can't feel the negative emotions associated with failure if you don't make an attempt in the first place. The issue with this logic is you're guaranteed to fail if you don't start. The typical procrastinating belief associated with a worrier is, I won't be able because, and they'll fill in the blank, even if it's something that they're stuck in their head about. Well, here's the thing. If you don't choose, for those of you who found out that that was your procrastinator type a couple of weeks ago, to not choose is actually to choose. I don't know if you ever thought about that. So even some of you who have been procrastinating on either starting your business or getting trained and certified or whatever, I always tell our coaches, because I know I'm talking to coaches, and we're going to find ourselves in one of these types. If you are a worrier type, if this is kind of you, and here's what I would say is, if you've Googled becoming a life coach or becoming a coach, getting certified as a coach more than like 2 times in your lifetime, that means that you're procrastinating. It means that you already know what you need to do, but there is something that's actually preventing you from doing it. And if you're a worrier, these are some of these things of this fear that you won't succeed, this fear of failure that looks like this. And the thing is that if you don't choose, you're actually making a choice. And honestly, if you don't choose, then we don't know what could have happened. We don't know who you could have been. I always say this: if you don't choose, who are the people that lose the most if you won't choose? It might be you, but if I know your personality type, and there's a certain personality type of coaches, you're actually thinking about the rest of the world most of the time. You're thinking about your family most of the time. You're thinking about your children most of the time. And yes, you do think about your destiny and purpose. And yes, you do think about making better money and getting out of a 9 to 5 that you don't like and stuff like that. But it's always unto something greater. I know that. So you have to ask that question. And it's an important question. Who loses the most if you don't choose to do something? And that really puts failure in a category together, that it's like, okay, this is a way that I can process this. It really helps me understand who is losing, because there's a fail that's happening. It means that if we fail to do things, then that also means that the people that we were meant to help are not going to come into their destiny, are not going to come into their purpose. Imagine if somebody that you were supposed to be coaching was going to be the person who discovers cures to rare cancers, but they had self-doubt and they had limiting beliefs and they had a lot of other things and they had some setbacks, and they decided not to go because they were afraid of failing or whatever was going on. But it really required us to step up so that we can bring the watermark higher for other people. I mean, I really think of it in those kinds of ways. Who loses the most? And maybe it's your children, maybe it's your house, maybe it's you. I don't know. But I think that we need to grab a hold of what that is to motivate us out of this place where we're kind of stuck in procrastinating. But let's dial in a little bit more on this particular procrastinator type, which is a worrier. And there's a few sticking points that are specifically for worriers that we want to identify. And I want to give you some tools to be able to help them. And we're going to get in and out of here pretty fast tonight, I think, because I know some of you guys aren't done hanging out with your family, or maybe you're just super tired from being at the beach all day or whatever you did. So let's do this. Sticking point number 1 is that worriers tend to be indecisive and often fail to commit themselves to the specific decisions that they do make. And so there's 2 parts of this. They're indecisive, I say this a lot. When you're indecisive, you most of the time you don't really know what's most important. Or what I would say is you are indecisive, and so it looks like you're making a decision, but your heart hasn't fully committed in the decision. And so there ends up being a lack of follow through, because what I always say is what you are most committed to is what you actually do. So I use this example as well. If someone started in January and they went on, they start going to the gym and they started a diet, and then 3 months in, or even not even 3 months in, but let's just say 3 months in, they're not even near the gym anymore, and they've gone back to the way that they were eating before. Some people might say something like, oh, it was unsustainable, and they might make some excuses, but the reality is that you were committed to something more. You had a divided commitment. Maybe it was a commitment to being more comfortable, not dealing with the pain, not getting up early in the morning, not eating bland food, not giving up sugar, whatever it is. That was actually what the greatest commitment was to. And so sometimes you'll see your clients seem to make a commitment to something, but what'll end up happening is that you'll notice that they're not fully committed. They seem to be saying, "Hey, I'm taking on this goal. This is something that I want to achieve," but there's some part of their heart that is divided, and we need a fully committed heart. Otherwise, you stay where you were before. So how do you actually deal with this sticking point? Well, here's how we deal with it. I understand that starting out, there's a lot of overwhelm that's involved in starting any kind of a goal, especially if somebody has been stuck. If I look at my life right now, and let's say that I'm at level 0, and the life that I want is level 10. Let's say that level 0 is I'm working a 9 to 5 and I know what I can count on. I don't really love it, but I know what I can count on in terms of the finances and what's going to happen in my work day and all of this other stuff. And it's a safe place, and I like my coworkers, and it's not too stressful or whatever, but I hate it. Um, but I want something more, and I'm at 0, and I haven't been doing anything, exactly like starting a coaching career, which I'm picturing myself in the future. Coaching career over here, level 10, making 6 figures, controlling my own schedule, working with clients, enjoying it, fully alive and everything else. Well, my life right now probably doesn't resemble that at all in terms of getting, my job may not be very purposeful. I don't have a whole lot of momentum. My bank account right now does not look the same as a 6 figure coach or whatever. And so to look at this, what ends up happening, instead of realizing that we take incremental steps towards something, you know what it actually kind of looks like? It kind of looks like, well, I'm on this level, and I'm looking up. This is a little dramatic, isn't it? I'm on this level and I'm looking up and I'm like, I have no idea how this version of me could be this version of me, because you're overwhelmed by how far you've got to go. And you're like, okay, what is all this going to require and everything else? And the more information you get, the more daunting it feels. So what we have to do as coaches is that we need to help people reduce the overwhelm. Now, generally speaking, we do help people set goals and set action steps to lead them there. And the thing that helps people get out of overwhelm is that if you knew that you only had 10 steps to get from here to there, then if you're on step 2, you at least know where you are. You can look back and say, here's where I was, but I'm 20% towards, coming into this or whatever. So what we can do to help reduce overwhelm on the front end is to actually give them manageable steps. So as we are working towards a goal, it's a normal thing to help our clients clarify what the goal is and what is it going to take to get there. But for some people, especially, we need to give them a win, and we want them to feel good about it, and we want to win really quickly. And so sometimes overwhelm is so much that, you know what, a small step, even a baby step, is at least a step towards here. You know that one step is still 10% closer to my goal than doing nothing. And we need to really encourage our clients with that perspective. And so here's a few questions that you can use, some coaching questions for people who are warriors, and specifically with this sticking point. What is one small step you can take today towards making a decision on this task? That's one question. Here's a second question. How can you break this large task into smaller, more manageable steps? So let's think about it. Even, we've got all aspiring coaches or coaches here. That somebody was like, oh, well, what's it going to take to go from here to start my coaching career? Because, and it feels like, okay, it seems like there's a massive, okay, I'm going to have to go get trained. I'm going to have to get certified. And then I've got to try to figure out how I find clients. And we have all this other stuff. That's why we actually started a Jumpstart program. So I realized a lot of coaches were getting trained and certified and they didn't know how to start their business. And so you know what we did? We boiled all of the work down to simple steps and took all the guesswork away. And then what we did is we always give our coaches a course progression. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, like literally we break it down. And when you know where you are, and you can even have those big overall, like if you've got 4 or 5 steps, when you can break them down to smaller steps and you give people support, which is what coaches do, then you can help people stay encouraged because they know that they are taking steps towards things, and we're also not overwhelming them. We don't want to devalue the small steps because the small steps matter. I just want them to get started, whatever step that is. Get started and then see where it brings you. For some of you who haven't gotten your coaching career started at all, take a baby step today. At least enroll in our free course and find out what the heck it's about. Kick the tires. My wife always says that's how you know that you're a middle-aged man, because you say kick the tires. Also, I'm wearing Under Armour, and I learned that about 2 months ago that if you wear Under Armour that you're officially middle-aged. So I guess I am, but I like it. So I don't know. All right, let's keep going. Sticking point number 2, the lack of confidence in their own abilities, which causes them to avoid or delay doing things. This is a major one that I see amongst coaches. Well, how do we deal with it? Well, there's 2 parts of this that I would encourage you. If you've got a client that is a worrier, we can do a couple of things. We want to upgrade their perception with reframing and with their vocabulary. Because what happens a lot of times, people's vocabulary about themselves, their own self-doubt and everything else. And it doesn't mean that it always comes out of their mouth, but sometimes it comes out of their mouth. But it's definitely happening in here. Vocabulary really matters because you can escalate and you can de-escalate situations based on the language that you use. So what happens is that the words that we use, if they sound powerless, if they sound like a victim, if they sound like it's daunting, if the words sound like and they mean, oh, I'm stuck here, I'm not gifted, I'm not talented, oh, this is going to take me forever, this seems impossible, this is going to be a lot of work, or I'm really overwhelmed. And you know what ends up happening? The vocabulary that you use really amplifies your emotional state towards whatever word that you're using. So a hyped up word that is around it being daunting and being overwhelmed and everything else, you know what you're going to do? You're going to feel really, really like everything's going to kick in. Your brain's going to kick in. You know what? I can use language and alter my state anytime that I want, mental and emotional, for better or for worse. So you'll hear this sometimes. You'll hear people say stuff like, I'm about to explode. I'm about to go off on these people. And you know what they do? They go off on those people. They predicted it, but they elevated their emotional state. But you also see athletes do it through great self-talk. I watched a runner just yesterday that they had them mic'd up, and the way that they were talking to themselves, and they were kind to themselves, and they were encouraging, and they were uplifting, and it was a big, you can do this, you're going to do this. It wasn't dissing other people, but they had a vocabulary that helped them stay focused, and it brought them to the proper emotional state and mental state that made them feel like, I can actually do this. I'm actually really confident and this can happen. So language is a really big one. And then just reframing. What is reframing? Reframing is when we use it in a coaching situation, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to help them highlight and focus on whatever, if they're looking from a perspective of, well, I'll do this again. if they're looking at it from a perspective of, this is really overwhelming. Well, this is a really bad perspective if I look up and it's not encouraging me. I can help the client come from another angle and look at something. That's what a reframe is. We can reframe anything. We can tell a story that allows the client to be empowered, feel competent, and feel like they can actually move forward. And so we want to use both of those things with this particular issue. So the way we speak hypes up negative emotions, which makes it even harder to take action. So what do we want to do? We want to help the client transform negative self-limiting statements into more positive action-oriented ones. And this builds confidence and reduces the fear of failure. So here's some coaching questions that we can utilize. How can you turn I don't know into one thing I do know is, and that helps them create clarity? Here's another question. What can you say to yourself instead of I can't that opens up possibilities and solutions? When somebody says I can't, they take themselves out of the game. And you know what happens when you say I can't? Your reticular activating system doesn't get engaged. What is this? We've got this system in us that helps us find solutions. When you say I can't, you take yourself out of the game and nothing happens. When you say something like how can I, all of a sudden now I'm saying that I can, and I'm looking at possibilities. And so what'll end up happening is that you will find the solution at that point. Third thing, how can you reframe a past success to boost your confidence in your current abilities? So one of the things that happens a lot of times when people hype themselves up in the negative states and everything else, they're really obsessed on what's happened in the past, and it's stealing their joy for the future and their hope for the future, or they are stirring themselves up with the picture that could be failure or whatever. The best way to get somebody in and quickly get them in a state where they are more resourceful is to get them thinking about when they were successful, when maybe the odds were against them and they did end up being successful. So, and here's the cool thing is that anything that you imagine, whether it is past, present, or thinking about the past, thinking about the present, or you imagine the future, all of those seem to have an emotional benefit, a mental benefit to them, or they can actually lower it and make us less resourceful. So if we start thinking about positive things and reliving positive experiences, you get the present reality of it feels really good when you think. That's why when you get together with friends and you talk about really funny old times, it feels really, really good. And you can feel a lot of those emotions that were really good from those times and everything else. All right, here's the third one. The third sticking point is that often worriers have a high resistance to change, preferring the safety of what is known over the risk of what is unknown. And so it really holds people in their spot. So let's say we want a new career. You want a new career. You want to leave what you're doing onto a new coaching career. But see, what keeps you where you are is, even though it's not satisfactory and you don't like it, you don't enjoy it, it's a grind. Well, you know what to expect, so you stay there. And so the more that you are in this known space, and you're afraid of what could possibly, like, you like to think about what could happen in the future, but you're also afraid, and you've got, if your fear is outweighing what you really want, you're going to basically stay where you're at. So what we want to do in this case is that we want to challenge them out of their comfort zone. What do I mean by that? You want to encourage the client to do at least one thing each day that they've been putting off, and one thing each week that takes them out of their comfort zone. And what happens is that on a mental and emotional level, we're retraining the brain, we're retraining these people internally. They're training themselves for resilience. And so what happens is, and where do we see this? We see this with athletes that show up big time at the end of the game, and they want the ball in their hands, and they show up and do amazing things. People like Michael Jordan, we can think of those people. People like Kobe Bryant, thinking of people who are like in sports showed up really big when the game was on the line. Now, what was important is that the way that they practiced had everything to do with those moments. Michael Jordan, if you learned about his mental game, he was a mental juggernaut out there. People would say he was mean and all this other stuff, but the reality is that he had pushed himself to such a level that his comfort zone was way, 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 way over here. And everybody else, even though they might have had just as much talent and just as much skill, or more so, or even more athleticism than Michael Jordan. Yes, he had all of those things, but he had a mental game that was off the charts. And it's because he pushed himself. He pushed himself back past the comfort zone. There's been plenty of people who had just as much skill in athleticism as Michael Jordan, but they didn't become the GOAT, and they didn't become the amazing player that they could have been. Matter of fact, those people shut down. There's a lot of those players that end up getting criticized at a certain point. They play all great in the regular season. They get to the playoffs and they're nowhere to be found. And suddenly they can't hit the same shots and they can't make the same passes and they make a lot of mistakes. What is going on there? It's this principle right here. They're not truly resilient in these places. Michael Jordan would put all kinds of pressure on himself in his mental preparation and everything else, so that when it came to the game was on the line, it was as easy as practice, because he had already practiced that moment hundreds and thousands of times. So that, you know what happened? His body got used to doing hard things. And now this felt as easy as practice, because again, he's been practicing it so many times. That's the way we help people build resilience. So, what are some questions that we could ask people? One, what is one thing you've been putting off that you can tackle today? Not put it off, tackle today. Listen, I want to remind you of something that we teach in the Life Coach Certification course and in Bootcamp. As a coach, you have to have a lens when you look at people and not see them fragile and not think that pushing them is a bad thing. You need to be able to push your clients. Because what will happen is that if you can push them past their comfort zone, they will suddenly start gaining confidence and they will relate to themselves differently. Actually, you know what happens? Here, I'll give you a perfect example. There was a warning shot fired back in like the 80s and early 90s from a particular psychologist. In the warning shot it was against the self-esteem movement. The self-esteem movement believed that if you experienced failure, you would not recover from it. So you know what they did is they told all these things to parents and they told all these things to like teachers and everything else. And then they started not having standards and they started not having grades in some cases and not having entry exams. And then we start giving away participation trophies. Now, here's the thing. Here's the effect that it had. Because those people were not tested and we thought that, that it would be really detrimental to their mental health and everything else. Now they can't handle anything, from puberty to even going on a first job interview by themselves. This is what we've devastated, because self-esteem actually is built through resilience, not from taking resistance away. You need resistance. You need to do the tough things. You need to do, I'm talking to some people right now. You need to do some stuff you're afraid of doing. You need to do some stuff and test yourself, because what will actually break you out of self-doubt and give you confidence is actually that you went through the resistance and you did it. That's what was true for all of you, whether you were a new mom in your 20s or even as a teenager, whether you were some dude who lost their job, and it never came back in 2008, and you had to rebuild a new career. You had to put yourself out there again. You had to learn new skills, and you needed how to redefine yourself and everything else. And what ends up happening is that the people who go through things, this is what you'll find out from a lot of these multimillionaires and even billionaires. They can go back to times when they were broke, when they had less than $100 in the bank account, maybe thousands of dollars in debt, and everything else. They could have given up and they could have quit. But the resistance does something to you. And that's what actually gives you self-esteem. That's actually what gives you confidence in life, because you've been through it. That's why if somebody comes to you, I'm laughing about this, because I'd have people come up to me and my wife and they would talk about, we really want to have kids, but we just can't afford it. And I'm like, who could? They always are like, hey, if we could get all of these things in order, then we could go towards this thing, and I'll have confidence. You don't have confidence until you do it. You don't have confidence. You're not going to be ready to raise a kid. We read all kinds of books and everything else. None of our kids were anything alike. All of them had weird symptoms, and the doctors would say, oh, that's nothing, that's totally normal. Oh, that wasn't in a book, whatever. They all did different things. You know what? We all figured it out. Resilience made us show up in their lives. And on the other side, we have confidence. It's like, yeah, you could raise another kid. Not that you necessarily want to at your age or whatever, but you could do it. And you can tell other people, hey, you've got what it takes to do this. There's not going to be a class that, for all of us, if you think about it, there was probably no parenting class that gave you any encouragement. There was probably nothing that you could read that would fix everything. That's what's true. There's no reel you can watch on Instagram from this super mom that's like, here's what you do. And we're like, oh, thank you. I wondered what the answer was for the last 40 years of my life. No. You know where you learned it? Hard, it was hard. Staying up all night, praying, holding them, persisting. And what ends up happening? You figure out what works and you find it. And then on the other side. Now, here's the thing. Starting a coaching practice isn't as hard as raising a kid. You guys have done that. That's one thing that I can say. You've done much harder things than starting a coaching practice. The job that you're in right now, much harder than starting a coaching practice, in my opinion. So I just want to say that. I'm not saying that this is even going to be hard. Man, if you've raised children, if you made it through the 80s and the 90s or the 2000s, you made it through the pandemic, you are perfectly fit and ready and credible. You've been through much harder things. And that's why, and there's something in resilience that you learned that tells me that you're ready to do it. But you know what? To go to a new place, you're going to have to go through some unknown things and embrace it. Learn to embrace the unknown. Learn to embrace learning. Learn to embrace your growth. Learn to see things not as painful. Resistance isn't painful unless you view it that way. It's like going to the gym. First time you go to the gym, you can't walk for 3 days afterwards like, what did I do to myself? I think I injured myself. But what happens is that people who are serious about working out and all those other things, they actually look for they know that resistance is doing something. If they feel a little bit of a pain, it's a growth pain. It's not you're losing your life. You're actually getting healthier. So they look for the resistance and they add resistance because adding resistance tells them that they're getting breakthrough, they're getting stronger, and they're becoming more like, and then they can look in the mirror and say, I'm looking more like I want to look. It's exactly the same principle. So we don't want to, as coaches, ever think that people are just going to get destroyed. They can be bent. They can be flexible. They're not going to be broken. This is actually going to help them because that's what retraining the brain and retraining your mental and emotional states looks like. Let me give you 2 more questions and we're wrapping up. What is one thing you can do this week that takes you out of your comfort zone? We need to know that. We need to push our clients to do those things. Who can you rely on for support and encouragement as you move forward with this task? Obviously, we will be those kinds of people, but we can encourage them as well to find the people who are the best means of support for them. Next week, we're going to talk about how do you coach dreamers, the dreamer procrastinator. And I'm looking forward to this one. You know why? Because I am a dreamer procrastinator. So if you want to find out what Paul's procrastination type is like and how to coach somebody like me, you'll join me next week. Let me pay the bills really quick and we're going to get out of here. For those of you who have not gotten trained and certified as a coach, here's what I would recommend if you were coming out of the gate. I'd recommend our Jumpstart program. Here's the reason why. It's $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. You get trained and certified. Here's the thing. You guys are already looking at programs and you know what training and certification costs out there in the industry. And it's anywhere between like $4,000 to $14,000 if you're going through an accredited school. We are an accredited school, but we don't have a sales team. One of the reasons why these programs cost so much is because they're paying a sales team at least a quarter of what you're paying. We get asked to promote other people's programs and they're like, we'll give you 25%. And we're like, okay, that's like stealing from people. Why don't you just lower the price of your program to make it manageable so that you don't have to have a sales team and hype things up or whatever? It's crazy that we actually have had programs that say if you'll sell this to your students, we would actually make more money just being an affiliate and just selling other people's programs or whatever. But I'm not going to allow my who I am to be leveraged in that kind of a way. We're trying to make a way where I take all of your excuses away. So if you have a financial excuse and that's the reason why you're not getting started or whatever, I don't think that you should start with debt like I did as a coach. I think that you could actually get started. I think that you can get trained and certified in an accelerated way, and we can give you the business development steps to help you thrive as a coach. So you do get trained and certified as a coach. You're going to get 2 programs for certification when you enroll in Jumpstart. One of them is our life coach certification course. It's self-paced, so you can go through all the modules self-paced. There's 7 total modules that have assignments and activities and coaching exercises and all of those other things. And it concludes with an exam. That program, the life coach certification course, also allows you access to Tuesday night training, which is optional. So every Tuesday night from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific time, I go through those modules. We connect with the students, and we also do a Q&A. So that way, you're not just downloading a certificate from some website. You can actually interact with me and with other students all over the world. You can find homework buddies, accountability, all those things. We also had our boot camp this past weekend, but when you join Jumpstart, it's included. That 3-day certification program where we do a super accelerated version of the life coach certification course, you get that as a part of Jumpstart. You also get Brand Camp. Brand Camp is 13 hours. I walk you step by step on how to develop marketing messaging. I show you how to do search engine optimization. That alone, I can show people and help them successfully get on page 1 of Google. And it's not hard to do. I show you how to do it. And you go through, and that alone would be worth thousands of dollars. But we show you how to create sales pages. How do you develop websites that are high converting? How do you write emails that are that people will actually open and actually respond to? We have students who are getting email open rates of like 70%, and emails like almost free for people to actually create. You create their email account and use for business and everything else. All of these things that we do in here, how to discover your niche, all of those other things are actually included in Brand Camp. We also give you the coaching product launch blueprint. The coaching product launch blueprint is for everything from business launches, group coaching, online courses, webinars, workshops, all of those things. What are we doing in this? Well, we take you from brainstorming idea all the way to launch. And what we do during that time is you'll know the steps. So not only will you formulate and come up with a couple of product ideas, but you're going to figure out which one of these it would actually work in terms of a mode of delivery. I'm a really big proponent of developing multiple streams of income for your business, so that you're not just trying to do one-on-ones and hustle to find clients and stuff like that. This is included in Jumpstart. All these things for only $97 a month. That's the cost of Starbucks daily. It's a 3-month minimum commitment. And this is for cheap cup of coffee Starbucks if you don't leave a tip. $3.25 a day. Compare this to anything else in the market. If you're not certain, we haven't built trust with you yet, go on the rest of our YouTube, look at the videos and stuff that I create there, and let that speak to you. Look at the reviews, even from this weekend, that are on our website right now, that we've got literally hundreds of Google verified reviews, and we have a 4.9 something rating with all of our students that we've been working with. Enroll in our mini course and get firsthand experience of what it's like when I train people and everything else. Let that be the verdict to help get you over the hump. But if you're just at this point, well, I know that this is going to be the school, and just do it. The link's inside the description. Click that link, get enrolled, and let's make this thing happen. Listen, happy Memorial Day. I appreciate you guys all immensely. Thanks so much for spending your Memorial Day night with us. Or if it's Tuesday and you're watching this on a replay all day, thanks so much for taking your time with us. Listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week and take care.